What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. And joining me once again is the one and only Perri Goldstein, who is celebrating her birthday as you are watching. Perri Goldstein, how the heck are you? Happy birthday.
Thanks. I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
I am happy you are here as well. Thankfully, I'm not taking away from your time on your birthday. We're recording this the day before your birthday, but still incredibly exciting anyway. So I'm super pumped for you. We've got a lot to go over, though, so we could go in a million different directions. We're going to get to a priority list this offseason. I want to hear yours. I did an episode with sort of labeling my priorities, kind of a quicker episode, but I want those priorities are going into this offseason. So I'm very interested in yours. And then we can kind of address, how we think Green Bay can actually go and fix those priorities, fix the needs that this team has. Before we get there, just a couple pieces of news and notes. Greg Williams, per Josina Anderson, we knew yesterday that it was reported that he was going to be coming to Green Bay as a cornerbacks coach. It sounds like he's also getting the title of passing game coordinator, at least per Josina. I want to hear just your overarching thoughts on the hire of Greg Williams and your thoughts of him potentially getting that passing game coordinator role as well.
Yeah, so he's stepping into the same exact role that Jerry Gray had. So they're filling basically like two birds with one stone, I get, or two roles with one person again. Seems like it's a step up for him, which is great because I don't know if like a young, kind of exciting coach would want to make a lateral move. So I guess maybe they kind of dangled the carrot of, hey, this is kind of like a promotion for you. I'm really excited about it. I actually talked about this today. I went on the radio. If anyone listening lives in La Crosse and listens to Grant Bills' show. And I said this today that I just feel like it was a little disappointing that the DC position wasn't getting filled with anybody new this offseason, especially seeing some of the names that have been floated around, right? Like Evero and Brian Flores and Steve Wilkes and just like younger, more aggressive, kind of exciting defensive coordinators that the Packers unfortunately will not have in-house. And I just think like the pairing of Greg Williams, who is I put in that category a little bit more. He's he's 46, he's young. I think the energy that he would bring to that room kind of fits with the cornerbacks and the DBs a little bit nicer. And I think it's a kind of nice, like balanced pairing with Joe Barry, who's not exactly like the get in your face, hype you up, rah guy. I don't know if Greg Williams' personality is like that, but I just think the younger, more, I don't know, progressive kind of new wave coaching is like something that this like side of the ball definitely needed. And I'm glad they went in that direction versus someone a little bit older.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited that there's some new blood on the defensive side of the ball in some capacity. It just felt like if they were going to run everything back status quo, that didn't settle right. It's something needed to change. And whether this was an upgrade or a downgrade, only time is going to tell, right? It's like, this is one of those things that's so incredibly hard. Like we can go and watch film of certain things, but like trying to pick out of like, oh yeah, look what Jerry Gray taught Eric Stokes on that play. Like that was like, those are such things that are just really difficult to do. I'll be honest. I'm happy that you're excited about it. And I actually think you bring really good points to the table. I was a little bit underwhelmed just overall by like, it felt as like just a cornerbacks coach and maybe had plans for the passing game coordinator for something else. I would have maybe been a little bit more okay with it, but like, if they were going to go and use that full role, the passing game coordinator and cornerbacks coach or defensive backs coach, to me, like they should have probably upped the ante a little bit more. I would have liked to have seen this team take something and say like, hey, we're gonna pay top dollar. We're gonna get a defensive backs coach / passing game coordinator, and maybe even tie title to that and go out and get one of the top guys that are available out there. I think that would have maybe been a little bit better of a direction to go in, but. Like I said, I'm excited that there's somebody new in the room. And I think at that point, like I said, it's really tough to evaluate. All we can do is kind of hope that he brings a little bit new ideas, new energy to the table.
Yeah. I mean, obviously this is me trying to find a silver lining and the point of like, I just wish the Packers had moved on from Joe Barry. Yeah. So it's just me being positive.
I think one of the things that, and this is a totally different topic, but just kind of going off what you're saying is that it is going to be very interesting if Green Bay really regrets this offseason with defensive coordinator, if Joe Barry doesn't turn things around. And there were some signs at the end of the year, but like you said, all of those names, Ejiro, Avero, you've got Vic Fangio, you've got Steve Wilkes. Like there's just a treasure trove of amazing defensive coordinators out there. And
Brian Flores is in the division.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they might regret that twice a year.
Yes. So, and even if like they get through this season and realize Joe Barry's not the fit, there's a good chance that the defensive coordinators available next offseason are nowhere near as good as the defensive coordinators that were available this offseason. So yeah, they're playing with fire a little bit, but hopefully Greg Williams is a great coach, a great hire, and all we can do is kind of wait and see what type of energy and passion and coaching he brings to the table for a defensive backfield that needs to be better in 2023 than they were in 2022. One other quick noteworthy item. It's not super noteworthy, but I guess we'll talk about it quickly anyway. Aaron Jones, in an interview, basically said Jordan Love is ready. Everything's going to be good. Had no concern. If this was just like, the first time we've heard this, maybe it would just be like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like, what is he supposed to say? Like, no, we are screwed if Jordan's our quarterback this year. Like, what can he say? And Aaron's like the consummate positive guy. Like everything is still like, so we can only take this with a little bit of like a grain of salt, but this has now been a trend of a lot of the people on the team kind of going to bat for Jordan a little bit and saying, yeah, he's ready to play and we're going to be totally good if Jordan's the quarterback.
It is. And it's been guys at all levels, I think. It's not just like practice squad guys or like scout team guys that he's with every day. It's guys like Aaron Jones. And I think Romeo Doubs had some really nice things to say too. So again, part of it is like, what else are they going to say? They're not going to publicly be like, actually, we think he's a bust.
Yes, he's dead.
Yeah. But there's just some things that also are consistent in what each of them say about him. It's not just like the praise, right? It's that like they've seen his growth and development and they appreciate his leadership style and the way that he carries himself and his confidence and his ability to kind of like do things in the huddle and doesn't get fazed by, just like it's the same exact compliments that are coming out from everyone. And so that to me is like, that can't be scripted, right? That just has to be like who Jordan is. So it's making me even more like anxious to figure out who's going to be under center.
Same here. And you saying that actually has sparked a little bit of a, kind of, I don't know, something in my mind where I just remember Jordan Love when he first came out and when he was in his first, go around, it was the whole COVID off season, but even in his second mini camps, OTAs, and he's out and it's just like, he looks so panicked and everything was a check down. Perri, everyone in the media, I can look everyone in the eye and tell them everyone in the media was being overly nice to Jordan Love with how he looked early in his career, because I was there at practice and the amount of just like panicked feet, check down stuff, play after play after play after play was not great. It was not great. And it was like, and everyone's like, well, he's young. It's still early. COVID the year before, like all this stuff. But like just seeing him last year command the huddle, have no panic. And I know it's 20 some snaps in the regular season, whatever, but just get to his launch point and rip the ball, whether it's a sideline shot to Aaron Jones, whether it's a ball over the middle of the field to Christian Watson, just having that confidence is a night and day different QB than we saw in his rookie year and in his sophomore year in the NFL. And you can tell, again, the players have noticed that growth as well. And it just sparked that in me as you were kind of saying that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we forget because nowadays a lot of quarterbacks come in and are pretty much ready to go because that's how college is now. Like Jordan was always going to be a developmental prospect. Like they took a flyer on a guy with a high upside and a lot of athletic talent and said, let's see if we can mold him. And it's been 3 years. So I'm not surprised that he looks night and day. Now, again, it could have been that they saw all this potential and it never came to fruition. And that potentially could still be the case. We don't know. Yeah. But I would say watching him in the Eagles game this season was definitely, like you said, the first time where I was like, that guy is commanding the offense. That guy knows exactly what he's doing out there, and he looks really poised while he's doing it. And I just think more time will tell. But even from the Chiefs game, which I think, again, was a really hard test because Spags just blitzing the hell out of him. But just, again, like so much development between those two starts.
Totally agreed. Only time's we'll tell what's going to happen next, but it does seem like the players on the roster are confident with what Jordan can bring to the table. That brings us to our main topic. I want to hear your breakdown. You can go in any direction that you want with this, but let's start with number one. What is your number one shopping list item for the Packers this offseason?
Oh my goodness. Number one, it's a safety. It's a safety, baby. The Packers don't have any starting safeties in my mind going into this season. So I can't see them bringing back Amos unless you want to take a very, very team-friendly deal. You have talked extensively about kind of what to do with Darnell Savage. And I think like best case scenario is potentially Savage is just no longer on the team. And even if he is, he's not a starting safety. So now you're left with 3 starting corners who are probably all really boundary corners, no slot corner, and no safeties. Some great depth safeties, right? They picked up some really nice pieces there, but no one in the back end.
No, it's a major gap. It's a major hole. I know there is some, going back to training camp last year, at the end of training camp, they did play Rasul Douglas at safety. I also played him at slot, and that didn't work out.
But it didn't go well.
No, and it didn't work out at slot. Like, it's a possibility. They could play Stokes and Jair on the outside with Rasul at safety. That's a move that he could potentially make. I just don't know that that's the direction that you want to go. It's certainly not an ideal direction, right? So, yeah, I'm with you. Even if Savage is back, and even if you kick off this offseason with Savage, Innis Gaines, Tariq Carpenter, like, that's just clearly not good enough. And I'm higher on Innis Gaines than I think almost maybe anyone in the world besides Justice Mosqueda maybe. But overall, they need to add not only add like legit starting caliber talent to that safety group. Do you have a preference if you're putting your Brian Gutekunst hat on, draft? Are you just developing Carpenter and Innis Gaines? Are you going free agency? Like, what's your how would you fix this safety position?
It's a hard question to answer because there's no cap space, right? And I think of all of the positions, actually, safety doesn't garner the same amount of money that some others would. Like the top end safeties, sure, like a Derwin James, but the Packers aren't going to go out and get one of those guys as much as I would love that. So I think they actually could use some free agency money in this area. I would love to see them do a very typical Packers thing where they go out and get maybe a lower level like name, like not a household name, but like a solid safety, and then draft somebody. I'm like completely blanking on his name, so you're going to have to help me, but he played at Michigan with Rashawn Gary, and he was on the Giants and the Browns. Why can't I think of his name?
Peppers.
Thank you. Jabril Peppers is a free agent. I know he's a little bit older. Wow, you really got there with me. And I think that would be really fun. I said it before he went to his last spot in free agency, and I'll say it again now. Like someone more at that level, and then go out in the draft. It's not a position I would take in the first round. I don't think that there are very many like really worthy picks at 15, like safety wise. But a second or third rounder, yeah, you're going to have to use some like top 100 capital.
This is not a team that should be probably spending. I haven't looked at any of the top safeties in this draft yet, but this is not a team that should be spending a top 15 pick at safety. It's not. This team has bigger needs at more important positions than that. I'm with you. Juan Thornhill is a name that I posed out there on a couple of different occasions from the Chiefs. I think he could kind of hit that sweet spot where it doesn't totally break the bank, but young, talented player who could come in and maybe even play better in Green Bay than what he has in Kansas City. And he's been a sound player for the Chiefs, will be a major player for them in the Super Bowl this weekend. Duron Harmon is more of a cheap veteran. I think that could maybe plug a spot if they needed to fill a veteran. I'm sure they're probably interested in getting Rudy Ford back in some capacity as well. Dallin Levitt in a specialty. Like if Dallin Levitt's back, it can say safety next to his name. He just put him next to the specialists. Just put him next to the long snapper, the kicker, the punter, and Dallin Levitt, because they have no intentions of playing him at safety or hybrid linebacker. He's just a special teams dude. So even if he's back as a safety, he's not really a safety. Jeremy Reeves from the Commanders, another name that I floated out there, but 1,000,000% in lockstep with you. I think this is an incredibly important position. And I do think probably a cheaper free agent, Jabril Peppers, Juan Thornhill, someone like that with back. And then, probably like a second or like, I don't want to say 3rd round pick because we already know how that's going to go. Like a day 2 draft pick. We'll just say that day 2 draft pick for a safety seems to make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a weird position to have to go after, to be honest, because safety is very like nebulous these days, right? Because there's some cornerbacks that can hybrid safety. There's some guys who are just like really true safeties and can't cover. It's very like scheme specific, and you don't want to spend that much money, and you don't want to use high draft capital because how often does it really pan out that happens like to go well? So you got to be really like smart about it. I actually think Goot did a perfect job with Adrian Amos. Like go out and do the same thing again with just like the next player.
No, I couldn't agree more. All right, what is number 2 on the Perri Goldstein shopping list?
Oh dear. It's okay. I say this not because I have 4 right on my list. 3 that I think are like definite needs. 1 that's like more of a sneaky need that I feel very confident the Packers are going to address. My next 2 are needs for very different reasons, but I'm going to say this one simply because same as safety, the room is just like empty. And I'm going with tight end because who is on this roster besides Josiah DeGuara? I don't like and Matt LaFleur's scheme is so heavy 2 tight end sets, right? So like this isn't even just they need 1. Like they're going to need multiple tight ends this offseason. This is 100% something that they're going to go after in the draft. Like I have no doubt about that. I actually think that the toughest position to fill is going to be Mercedes Lewis's role because he's just like so unique and so niche within this system, and nobody blocks like him, and nobody blocks and doesn't care that they don't get targets like him, right? Because I think a younger tight end might be like, well, I'm not just a blocker. I want to catch passes too. And Mercedes could not have cared less. He's basically a 6th offensive lineman. So I just think like this room is going to be a complete overhaul. I'd be shocked if they brought back Robert Tonyan. Maybe if he couldn't get the money he wanted in free agency, he comes back on a like more team-friendly deal because he didn't like necessarily produce after coming back from his ACL. But yeah, again, I think this is going to be a go out and get a cheaper free agent potentially. I actually talked about this with Maggie. We recorded Pex, which she said today as well. And I was like Irv Smith from the Vikings, he's a free agent, right? He didn't really produce this past season either. He was injured, like kind of a flyer guy like that. He's young enough. He's 24. And then take a tight end again in the top 100.
Yeah, no, I think that could make some sense. I love tight ends. I mentioned this the other day. I love tight ends going on second contracts because I think their first 3-4 years for a tight end are insanely hard because you're learning how to be a receiver and you're learning offensive line concepts basically as well, in blitz pickups, pass protection, run blocking. Like it is just such a difficult job to learn. And I do think you start seeing a breakout a little bit more towards year 4 and then into year 5 in their second contract. So that can make some sense. Mike Gesicki's a name if they really wanted to spend money, if this ends up being an all-in season. I do think they could get the cap hit low enough in year 1 that they could make it work. Probably not super realistic, but not impossible either. And then one of my favorite guys that I think makes a lot of sense, especially if they need to replace a Mercedes Lewis, is a Josh Oliver. I talked about him from the Baltimore Ravens. Really kind of had a little bit of a breakout year last year. He's only caught like 20 career passes, but he played much better than that a year ago and really blocked well as both a run blocker, pass protector, out on the edges and in the screen game as well. So I think he's actually a player that's also going on a second contract that could make some sense there. I'm going to cover this position in greater detail in an episode coming up. So I don't want to go too much in depth with it and spoil a full episode I got coming up, but I'm totally with you that I think this needs to be a position that gets a complete overhaul.
It's so interesting because I feel like safety and tight end are very similar in terms of like the TLC they get on either side of the ball, right? Like they're somewhat overlooked, but they're also incredibly important, but you don't ever really spend a ton of money, like unless you get like a George Kittle or a Travis Kelce, and then by all means pay them what they want. And you also don't normally spend high draft picks on them, but they're really, really, really important and like fundamental, especially for Matt LaFleur. So it's a delicate like dance to figure out kind of where Goot should be in terms of like how much he spends and gives for those two positions.
I feel like both positions, safety and tight end, there's like 3 or 4 great ones that completely change everything for your offense / defense. And if you don't get those, then you're like stuck with like good tight ends. And it like you kind of overlook safety, like you're mentioning, until you don't have safeties or don't have tight ends. And then it becomes a major problem. And to your point, it could be a major problem for Green Bay if they don't upgrade both of these positions.
Yeah, because I just can't imagine a Matt LaFleur offense without multiple tight ends all the time. And again, I'm not like doing this to overlook Josiah DeGuara. We don't know what he could be necessarily. I think he carved out a nice role this season. And like you said, it takes years sometimes, and he even lost a whole one to an ACL. But you just simply can't go into this season with just him. And like, I think Tyler Davis is also a free agent. I think it's literally just him on the roster.
And then Austin Allen, who they brought in on a futures deal, I think. And they might have Nick Gutekunst too, Perri Goldstein.
Okay, nice. That's a fun name.
It could be a real name or something I'm making up. One of the two. Either way, probably doesn't matter. But you have DeGuara, right? Like even in a best case scenario, that's not a guy that's playing 60 snaps and catching 60 balls. Like he has a role. There's no question about that. But like it's not going to be as a core tight end. It's just going to be more that H-back, fullback, maybe a tight end cameo every now and again. But that's just who he is as a player. All right, I'm curious to learn number 3 on your list. That was overlapping tight end.
Yeah, number 3 is, I feel like, one of those positions that's always a need. Like every 2-ish years, you need an edge rusher. And I think that like losing Rashawn Gary was a really blatant hole, because Rashawn Gary is, a superstar, but it also showed that the depth just isn't really there. And I love Preston as a 2. Preston is not a 1, and I think he showed that again losing Rashawn Gary. He's not an edge 1. And it just kind of, the dominoes kind of fall when you don't have that star guy. I mean, look at the Eagles, right? Look at the Eagles this season. I mean, first of all, they're just historic because I think they're like 3rd all time in sacks. So like, yes, this is a high bar to set, but they just stacked their line with guys who can get to the quarterback. And I truly, genuinely believe, besides, I think they have a really fun, like, triple threat offense. Like, this is why they're in the Super Bowl, right? They will wreck you up front. And the Packers just only have one guy, really, that can do that. Kenny can, but again, Kenny's not really, like, a true edge rusher. Like, he's a nose tackle. He just, like, happens to be able to, like, bring pressure and find the quarterback sometimes. So, I don't know. I would just really love to see the Packers get another guy with Rashawn, have Preston, Kenny's there, develop the defensive line. They just need to be more aggressive up front. And like we saw, like Rashawn might not even be back for the beginning of the season. Like this is an immediate need, in my opinion. And this is probably Preston's last year with the team.
Yeah, and not 1,000,000% guarantee Preston's back, although I do think it's very likely that he is. Either way, Preston is starting to get to that point in his career, very similar. Like he hasn't hit that Adrian Amos phase yet, where Amos just kind of fell off pretty significantly last year. But like that could be this year for Preston. Like we don't know. We're hoping that's not the case. But even if he's back, he's reaching that point in his career where like you could hit a severe decline. And I'm with you. I still think he can be a number 2 edge rusher. Rashawn Gary's coming back from a torn ACL. Enigbara, I think, has a lot of upside, but he needs to put on legitimate strength. And like, let's just be 1,000,000% real. This is not a Packers team that has a great success rate with 2nd and 3rd year jumps from players lately. Like we've been waiting for like all of these amazing 2nd and 3rd year jumps from players. They just haven't happened. A lot of times the players that they are as rookies is the players that they've continued to be. And in some cases, like Eric Stokes, like Josh Myers, like some other guys, we actually saw a decline in year 2 from year 1. So it is no guarantee that Enigbara is just like, well, Enigbara is going to be way better in year 2. I hope he is. I think he very much can be, but like that's not the trend, unfortunately, that we've seen a ton of. So I do think that if you had a trio of a healthy Rashawn Gary, a healthy Preston Smith, and a Kingsley Enigbara that takes even a little bit of a jump, like I feel pretty decent about that trio. But coming back from an ACL, Preston like basically on the decline, and Enigbari still unproven. And like you said, we could Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, Fletcher Cox, like that. And Fletcher's not an edge rusher, but like Milton Williams, like they've got so many freaking guys that they rotate on that Eagles defense and can play in so many different spots. The old adage is like, you can never have enough edge rushers. The Eagles said, hold my beer, hold my shot, hold my whiskey, hold my cigarette, like they hold all of it. And they just, downed it all at once. They're like, we'll get all of the rushers. And they did. And it's been awesome. So yeah, you can never have enough, and go get as many pass rushers as you possibly can.
Exactly. And again, you were like, I feel decent. I don't want to feel decent about this group. This is not a group that you can feel decent about. You can feel decent about your tight end group, right? You can feel decent about some other positions. I don't want to feel decent about my edge rushers. I want guys who are going to get after the quarterback and who are going to make life hell for opposing offensive lines. And currently the Packers have one. The other problem is that they're expensive. Right? This is a position that if you really want that like dominant guy who's going to make waves, like the Eagles spent a lot of money, right? To have this line. It's paid off. They made it to the Super Bowl. It will really, really pay off if they win a Super Bowl, but you can't ignore the investment either. It just doesn't come easily. And the Packers just do not have that. They would have to use like restructures and every bit of their capital to get like one guy maybe. So this is, I fully expect, and maybe my fourth category will be who they take at 15, but like I fully expect them to take an edge at 15 if a good guy falls there.
I think so. And if not, it'll still be a priority, I think, pretty early in the draft, one way or the other. So no, I'm totally with you. And the other thing too, you said like not just being like okay at the position. The other thing I don't want is Kenny Clark has had to play a crap ton of snaps over his career because they've never had anyone else that can spell him. When Kenny's off the field, things go to crap. So he's had to play like 80, 90% of the snaps every year since like his sophomore year in the league, right? So I don't want that to have to be Rashawn Gary where it's like, we can't take Rashawn off the field because if Rashawn's off the field, we can't do anything.
Yeah.
And like that could potentially be the way that this is trending especially for a guy coming off an ACL, like you don't want him to play that much. You want to keep him fresh. You want to keep him so that he's dominant for a decade, and getting him some legitimate help and being able to rotate guys in would go a long way in doing that.
Yeah. It's funny. I was thinking the same thing when you said they got so many guys on the Eagles who they rotate. I was like, yeah, so they can rest. So they're not playing 99% of snaps. It's really important. Like longevity is so important, especially for a guy like Rashawn who you took with the 12th pick. You're going to pay. I fully expect them to pay. Like you want him to be okay. You want to have him for as long as humanly possible.
Number 4.
Yeah. This is my sneaky need. And I think you're going to agree with me actually. And I don't say this, I caveat this by saying like the Packers always invest in this position. So that's why it's a sneaky need. But like, I really think the offensive line needs some retooling.
Interesting.
Badly. I believe Bach will be back. They just paid Elton. Okay. Left side locked down. In my opinion, no one else is locked down. Maybe JRJ. Like, I think he's like proven that he should at least get the nod as a starter. But like right tackle and center, sorry, Josh Myers, like there should be some camp competition there. And if a really, really good tackle is there at 15, I would not be surprised if the Packers took someone to be their starting right tackle.
I don't disagree. And we talk about not having enough pass rush. You never have enough pass protectors either. And you can continue to always strive to improve at that spot. I don't want to say I have zero faith in Josh Myers. I have a little bit more than that, but it definitely can't just be like, yep, Josh is our starting center this year. Unquestionably, there's not going to be any competition and we're just plugging and playing him for, this season. Like, I don't think you can do that at all. And I think you're in an interesting spot because if Bakhtiari's back, which I expect him to be at this point, not maybe 1,000,000% guarantee, but very likely to be back. That injury is we just don't know what's going to happen next, right? We don't know if he's going to make it through the next 5 years completely unfazed, or he has another issue in training camp and it's on again, off again. He misses 5 weeks and then he's back for a couple weeks and misses. We just don't know. So that in a way almost feels like a ticking time bomb in some capacity. you've got Josh Nijman, who even if he's back on a 1-year restricted tender, then becomes an unrestricted guy next year. Josh has not proven that you can have any sort of faith in him. And at minimum, he needs competition. So yeah, you like, I think you need John Runyon Jr. to take us, like, you really need him to be at least one guy you can kind of count on. And then of course, Elton Jenkins as well. But like Zach Tom, even, I'm very excited about Zach Tom, but he needs to find his long-term position. He needs to put on functional strength. And we just talked about, we can say, like, I think Zach Tom's going to take a big jump in year 2. I legitimately believe that. We haven't seen a lot of players take big jumps in year 2. It just hasn't happened, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm with you. And I would love to say, like, hey, there's also some lottery tickets and Caleb Jones and Rasheed Walker and Sean Ryan and, you know, some other guys on this team that you know, maybe one of them pays off and that helps too. But man, like, just get more guys that can compete for those spots, even if it's a 2nd round pick, a 4th round pick, a 5th round pick. Green Bay's had great success with those areas of the draft and offensive line, and you can never have enough competition.
They will. Like, I know that they will take guys somewhere, at least on day 3, like they always do. But like, so I think that's why I'm like, because I know they're going to do this, but the starting 5 going into this season isn't like a lock for me, that I think maybe in the past couple of off season, it's felt that way. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought Josh back just because he was such a great swing for them. And I agree about Zach Tom. And I think of all of the rookies, he's probably maybe the one that I expect to be more of like a starter. But I think the rest of the guys you listed, I don't know if I feel like they are going to be like ready-made starters. And no matter who's under center, whether it's your 39, 40-year-old aging Hall of Famer or a young guy who really, really needs to be protected because he's going to be like potentially deer in headlights, like that offensive line has to be perfect.
All right, so a couple others, I guess, that I wanted to ask you about, because I actually saw this as number 1 on a couple people's lists. And then, of course, the other one is just a constant talked about position. Defensive line and wide receiver. I want to ask you where those kind of rank on your priority list, and just like overall, if there is anything that you feel like Green Bay needs to do to address both of those spots.
Yeah, defensive line is always up there. I just think anything in the trenches is always going to be on that list. Like, you could lump edge and D-line together maybe. I actually personally just really want Devonte Wyatt to just play. And then I think like him and Kenny, it'll be okay. So I don't feel necessarily the same as getting a guy that is going to like bring the pressure. But always. Wide receiver is a funny one. I had this debate on Packs What She Said with Maggie. Yes and no, because it depends on who comes back, right? Or like, I'm in the camp that I don't think Lazard or Cobb are back. And so if that's the case, you probably need a guy to fill each of those roles, right? You're going to need a true slot. I don't know if they have a true slot. And you might need a more like blocking wide receiver like Lazard. I think you could fill the Lazard role with a tight end as well if you find someone that like fits that. But I think I feel really great about the room as it stands, but I would like to see a vet in there. They're all really young and they need some guidance. And especially if it's Jordan Love under center, it's a really young receiving core and quarterback that there's just gotta be like somebody. And you can get a cheap vet wide receiver, I think, like a guy on a 1-year deal. I'm not going to call it a Sammy Watkins type because I don't want to pan out that way, but like a similar, I've seen rumors that the Chargers might cut Keenan Allen because of cap space. And like, that is like, that would be perfect. That would be like ideal because he got cut. He'd probably garner money, but it's Keenan Allen. I don't think he'd ask for like big money. He's 30. He can still produce and he would be the perfect like vet for that room. So I think they could go out and get somebody like that, and they definitely need a slot guy. They could draft a slot guy. But I don't know if I necessarily see it as like a top 4 need. How do you feel about wide receiver?
Let me touch on defensive line really quick. I'm with you.
Okay.
Like I'm just bullish on Devonte Wyatt and TJ Slayton. Like I think those 3, like I actually would kind of like Jerron Reed back on like basically the exact same deal he was on, but instead of him being like the number 2-ish guy, like make him number 4. Like I would love if just like Slayton and Wyatt got the main snaps alongside Kenny Clark, and then Jerron Reed was like your rotational number 4 guy. Like that to me would feel really, really good. And then, you know, maybe you've got a Rudy Ford or another draft pick, or excuse me, a Jonathan Ford or another draft pick that's your number 5 guy. Like that to me would feel really good. I don't think you need to do something earth shattering. That said, if they went out and got a really dominant defensive lineman in the first and second round to pair with Kenny Clark, like sign me the heck up. But I agree with you. I don't think it is as big of a priority because I have some faith in Wyatt and Slayton. The wide receiver one.
I was gonna say they did that last season, right? So like, let's see what the guy you took last season can do before we take another first rounder. I don't know.
That's fair. And then from a wide receiver standpoint, so much of this is so hard because to me, it does depend who's at quarterback. I will say this, you know, who's a sneaky player that they could get if Jordan Love is back at quarterback? Randall Cobb. Like, it's the thing that you're like, Randall's tied to Aaron Rodgers, right? Like if Rodgers is back, Cobb is probably back. And if Rodgers goes somewhere, like Cobb probably goes with Rodgers, or at least like Brian Gutekunst, when they traded for Cobb, Brian Gutekunst said like point blank, the only reason Randall Cobb is here is because Aaron Rodgers is here. Like that's like they come as a package, right? Randall Cobb would be a great fit in that wide receiver room with a bunch of young wide receivers as like the veteran carryover. That could, you know, help Romeo Doubs, help Christian Watson, help those guys. But
the Donald Driver of this era.
But also kind of be like, they don't have like a true slot receiver, like to just like also kind of just be that guy for Jordan Love that can be reliable, that like, hey, Christian and Romeo and Samore and whatever rookie they bring in, like those guys might not be 1,000,000% precise on their routes all the times. It's 3rd and 8 and I need to know where my guy is. And like Randall Cobb's like a sneaky, like I kind of want him back no matter what guy. Which I didn't think I'd ever say. Like I didn't think I'd say that today. Just as you're kind of going through that kind of makes sense for that wide receiver room. But it's interesting. If they are going with Aaron, I do think adding in one more playmaker, whether that is the Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, and somehow find a way to make that cap hit in the first year really, really low to make that work. Maybe it's a Gesicki at tight end. Maybe it's who knows, right? But like, I do feel like they need another playmaker in some capacity. If it's Jordan, outside of having that one guy, whether it's a Randall Cobb or another like low price veteran, like you said, to kind of mentor some of these other guys, I kind of want to see these guys go learn through it together. Jordan's going to be a quarterback. You've got Dobbs, you've got Watson, you've got Toure. Go out and get another explosive guy. Maybe it's in the Rodgers trade, like Elijah Moore or a Denzel Mims from the Jets. You know, maybe it's something like that, or maybe they do go out and get another first or second round wide receiver to pair with these guys and have them sort of come up at the same time together, so that your hope is that in 2-3 years that Jordan Love is just slinging the rock to a fully formed Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Samori Toure and another playmaking wide receiver that they got in the draft. And those guys are all on the same page together, very similarly to what Rodgers and Jennings and Rodgers and Jones and those guys were by the time Rodgers was in year 3 or 4. So
yeah.
That would be nice.
Yeah. I was thinking that if they do end up trading Rodgers, getting some kind of receiver in that trade would be ideal. Because again, the market for receivers is just so high now that they just I don't think have the money to grab someone. I feel very on the fence about a DeAndre Hopkins. I would love it. He's been one of my favorite receivers to watch throughout his career. I do feel like he's at that end. Right? I don't know if it would be fruitful the way that the Packers would want it to. Bringing back Randall Cobb would really be something. I wouldn't hate it either. He's Mr. Reliable. It's not even he's a package deal with Rodgers and he didn't produce, so we don't really want him anymore. He's just here for Rodgers. He produced, right? When he was on the field, he was a go-to guy, and he's a great personality. He's a great locker fit. I'd love to see him retire a Packer with or without Aaron. You bring up a very interesting point. I just kind of assumed he was gone and hadn't even thought even more into it.
But
he probably is. But yeah, I just do think that there are some tiny holes in the receiver room. Just a few. Plug them up.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's 1,000,000% fair. All right, before we get out of here, Super Bowl prediction, go.
It's hard to bet against the Chiefs for me. I think the Eagles are actually better suited for this game on paper. They've got the edge everywhere, but Pat is
Pat?
I don't know. Pat's on another level right now. And I think that second ring is like hanging over his head. But I say this all the time. I root so hard for Jalen Hurts. I just absolutely love him, player, person. So easy to root for. So I don't know. Either way, it's going to be a good game. Would love to see MVS get a ring. So
that would be pretty cool too. No, I'm with you. I think it's going to be a phenomenal game. I'll give my prediction a little bit later this week. But Perri, enjoy the heck out of your birthday.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here. Make sure to go follow Perri on Twitter. Where can we find all your work?
Yeah, you can follow me at Perri_Goldstein. You can follow the podcast at PWSS Podcast. I'm with Maggie Loney 1 to 2 times a week with Odyssey. And we're going to kind of shake things up this offseason. So get ready for that. No spoilers, but you can just find everything on our Twitter page.
Make sure to follow her again at Perri_Goldstein. That's going to do it for us today. You can follow the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. You can follow me at Andy Herman NFL. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.